We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and bearing witness that none has the right to be worshipped or unconditionally obeyed except for Him. And we bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His final messenger. We ask Allah to send His peace and blessings upon Him, the prophets and messengers that came before Him, His family and companions that served alongside Him, and those that follow in His blessed path until the Day of Judgment. We ask Allah to make us amongst them. Allahumma ameen. Dear brothers and sisters, over the last 48 hours, the amount of times I have typed up something to say and then left it in my draft folder and deleted it, I can't tell you. I've probably written about 3 books in the last 48 hours and decided to delete. And I basically came down to 2 simple sentences in the wake of political assassination that has been on the screens of every American, that the algorithm mysteriously seems to be boosting rather than censoring, that I don't condone his killing, I won't participate in his mourning. I tried to think of the shortest way to express what I think the Prophet ﷺ taught us in regards to how we deal with certain types of deaths. In the wake of that, obviously, there is a lot of badgering from Islamophobes, which is to be expected. But there's also a lot of questioning that comes from Muslims. Aren't we supposed to be merciful? Aren't we supposed to show the moral high ground? Aren't we supposed to be different? And the answer to all of those questions is of course. However, sometimes the misapplication of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ not only misrepresents him ﷺ, but it actually blurs the clarity that we're supposed to have in this moment. And so let's start with one thing before talking about the specific incident. I remember a few years ago when Christchurch, New Zealand had the horrible terrorist attack on 50 plus Muslims in their masajid over there, and many Muslims expressed that it felt more real to them because it's New Zealand, and this looks like a masjid in America, and this is not one of those Muslim countries where you have masjids getting blown up routinely in Iraq and in Syria and in Yemen. And no, this is different. It felt too close. And that was fitri. That was natural. That something felt too close. And because of the natural human component that rocks you a bit more when it feels closer, that can be used as an opportunity to open up your eyes to a reality that maybe you weren't paying too much attention to. And so in general, when America looks at itself, and hopefully looks at itself and recognizes the horrible state that we're in right now, the mass shootings that are daily, the victims are getting younger, the shooters are getting younger, and the constant gun violence and the constant innocent death and the lack of safety on a subway or on a street or in a school or in a church or in a masjid or whatever it may be, all of that should be used to say that all of this is terrible. All of this is something to mourn as a state of the country, but also to open up our eyes to the reality that as America has fostered a culture of violence domestically, this is what America is creating abroad as well. We put into elements the worst forms of political violence everywhere, all the time as a country. And so you can't diagnose and solve what's near without paying attention to what's seemingly far. Open your eyes to a greater reality, and that will help you gain more perspective. If anything, that will broaden your empathy, not lessen it. That will make your mercy more well-rounded and allow you to have a deeper and better perspective rather than a narrow perspective that's limited to something that feels too close to home for you. SubhanAllah, think about how problematic those words are for us as an ummah. Humanity as an ummah of Muhammad ﷺ, too close to home. So here's the thing. There is something to say that when people see a violent death, it's hard not to feel a fitri, a human sense of devastation. That this is terrible when you see something like that. And again, for the proper disclaimer, I don't condone that type of violence here or anywhere, right? But for people to say or feel a sense that this is terrible, no matter how terrible the person was, it feels terrible because from a fitri perspective, we're human beings, we've been created that way that when we see blood spill, we're supposed to feel a natural sense of repulsion. That's who we've been created to be. But I want to offer the following two things. That fitrah will have us respond both in regards to our proximity to someone's life or our proximity to their death. What do I mean by that? Remember when Kobe Bryant died? There were other people in the helicopter too. No one remembers their names. Why? Because our kids and those of us who were watching basketball or who knew Kobe Bryant from afar, right? But we felt like, especially any cultural icon, you felt like you knew someone in life. Therefore, their death rocks you in a different way. And so, proximity to someone's life allows you to magnify the tragedy that happens to them, or proximity to the circumstances of their death, even if you didn't know them, the fitrah, right? When you see a human being bleeding out on the side of the road, I would expect you to have the mercy and to say, this is terrible, and want to do something, not to go up to that person and to ask them about anything else except for how can I help you and how can I save your life, and let me call 911, right? And do what I can to stop you from bleeding out. The thing about Palestinians is they've been robbed of both in the American imagination. They've been robbed of proximity to life and dehumanized in their existence and in their living, and their stories made distant, just as all of America's victims of political violence. And they're dehumanized in death. And so it should be said that those who have the nerve to talk about political violence today, after 2 years of being deniers of the worst manifestation of political violence, which is genocide, should be called out and condemned for their hypocrisy. They're the ones that should be on the defense. Where have you been? And you have to be able to put this forward, that what if people knew the stories of the people of Palestine before the genocide, and then even if they didn't know that, what if people watched in loop? You know, they've been talking about like the average time that people are replaying the video of the assassination. Can you imagine if people watched in loop the beheaded Palestinians from Gaza that show up on our screens every single day and kept pressing play and play and play, and that's what filled your social media feed? And that young boy who just 4 days ago walked up to his father who was beheaded by an American bomb, and a pregnant mother that's laying dead on the pavement. Can you imagine if we watched that on loop all the time? And so that's the thing. There is a natural type of fitrah. What if they were to hear the call of Hind Rajab over and over and over again? What if they watched the videos of starving Palestinian children in a famine being sniped in line for food by American snipers? Would that change the political calculus? Would that change the conversation? And so an appeal to empathy is to broaden the perspective and to say, you really have not been paying attention. You really have not been paying attention. And it is not for those who are selective with their condemnation to shame and to look back at others and to say that you lack mercy or that something else was there. On top of that, imagine if the headline read this way: Charlie Kirk dies by a stray bullet. Imagine if it read that way. Or imagine if a news anchor said that maybe the bullet was shot in celebration. That actually did happen. You know what happened? The news anchor was fired by the end of the night and completely removed. Imagine if there was assassination denial constantly, all the time. How enraging that would be to those that attach themselves to the said figure. Then come back to what we have been living, people that not only justify a genocide, but then deny it and enable it with their seemingly innocent words of dehumanization. And then come back to you and tell you that you're crazy for being enraged by this. You're crazy for your grief over this. That you're the one that has the problem. And in fact, denying it doesn't cost you your job. It actually promotes you to a podcaster with more views or to a president. It doesn't cost you anything. You get fired for actually protesting the genocide in this country. And so we take that step back. Then someone says, Sheikh, but we're not like our enemies. We shouldn't be like them. We should have mercy. We should have clarity. And my answer to that is true. but we frame our mercy by the mercy of the Prophet.